As Sri Lanka celebrates 14 years of defeating terrorism after 3 decades of war here in the island. Today we thought of talking about the war heroes, how far we have come in terms of reconciliation, accountability to the rest of the world, and especially ensuring national security of Sri Lanka. Well, I thought this year it'll be interesting to talk about this topic, especially when every year we celebrate the National War Heroes Day in May on the 18th and national celebrations on the 19th as well. This year we've invited to our studios Sri Lanka's wartime army commander, Sri Lanka's first commander to be elevated to the position, the rank of a general while in service, Field Marshal Sarath Fonseka. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and you are the first Field Marshal that we've produced here in Sri Lanka. I'd like to revisit your time, especially the time of your service leading up to 2009.
I became a general, say, a 2-star general in '98. From there onwards, I have been serving in various places like division commander, then security force headquarters commanders, Jaffna, and also in the east. Then I have been holding on to Director General operations in Army headquarters. That time I was maybe 10th down the line, sometimes about 5th, 6th in the line. Then I commanded the volunteer force also when I was about 4th down the line. Then Army number 3, number 2, then became the commander.
In 2005?
December 2005.
And you became, of course, you were elevated to the rank of Lieutenant General at the time.
That is the commander's rank normally.
The commander's rank. And post-war, you were once again bestowed with the position of Field Marshal. Of course, together with you, there were other commanders of the 3 armed forces,
yes,
the police who served, and thousands of soldiers and other ranked officials who've served in the war. Have you taken good care of them so far?
Yeah, there were issues. Soon after the war, I left the army. I had issues with the politicians. Because I left the army, there are so many others who were working in my staff, about generals, brigadiers, colonels, about 30 of them were also sent out of the army, even without pension. So likewise, what happened soon after the war was not very pleasing, not what should have happened in the army. In the case of if you are talking about those who sacrificed the battle casualties and others, I think with the available limited resources in this country, limited technology, we have taken care of them to a great extent. But I can't give you the assurance that as far as the financial needs are concerned, because the country is a very poor country, I don't think we have taken care of them in that aspect as the way a developed country will take care of them. Because they must be still facing various hardships after they were medically boarded out or after they retired after some time. There may be issues like that. And now, soon after the war, I left. Surprisingly, about 25,000 men deserted the army after we won the war. Normally, if the war is not there, the life has to be better for them. So this should have been due to certain issues on maladministration, or they were not, they never felt that they were given the due respect or due place. There have been issues. Now even recently I heard 25,000 soldiers have left during the last 2 years, deserted. So that means there are shortcomings somewhere. So in some areas there are some negligence taking place. Maybe there are areas where we have to address certain issues.
You are a politician now, but I'd like to keep politics aside from this conversation. We are celebrating the war victory achieved by yourself and thousands of soldiers, as I mentioned previously, and politically also for Sri Lanka we've been talking about a war victory. But at the same time, you've mentioned a number of some 25,000 who had deserted the army following the war. But what measures would you take, or do you think you have done enough to support them? Because now you have support politically as well. Throughout these years, you have had political hand. So do you think enough has been done to look into the needs? Because some may have suffered severe psychological disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders. Others have lost their limbs, lost their families, or maybe they have other hardships making ends meet.
As I said earlier, the technology, scientific developments, we are still backward. So if you are talking about traumatic disorders and various things, I am not a specialist on that. Maybe there have been issues where we are a little not up to the mark in certain areas. But as you said, I was never in a position to take care of the army or address these issues after I left the army. After I left the army, I was in politics all right, but most of the time in the opposition. We had our government, I was a member of one particular government, 2015 to 2019, I was a minister. But my job was different. Those who are looking, those who are responsible for such things, were not very keen to ensure that we interfere about those issues, because that I was looking at taking care of some other field, like I was the wildlife minister. So those who were in charge of defense, they were never interested about getting our assistance or our advice. These are these how the politics work in this country. There are a lot of problems, negligence, failures in this country due to incompetence of politicians.
Were you disheartened that you weren't part?
There would have been some cases like that.
Were you disheartened or disappointed that you weren't part of the decision making for the defense?
Soon after I finished the war, I wanted to do a lot of things. But the army was not in good shape.
How, in the sense?
When that time, when we finished the war, we have had a lot of casualties. The men were still under culverts and bushes and under trees, all over the jungles. A lot of the equipments had got destroyed. Like, for example, I started the war with 80 battle tanks. By the time I finished the war, I was left only with 30. So replacing these items, equipments, kitting up the soldiers properly, equipping them again, the weapons wise or any other equipment wise. None of those things took place after we finished the war. Those who are supposed to be responsible, they were only celebrating the war victory, but they were not keen to ensure that the services, military, were again given required improvements, taken care of the damages they have faced, gone through in certain areas. Well, that is normal after a prolonged war. Any army will suffer a lot of casualties. There will be equipment casualties. There will be a shortage of accommodation, the health facilities, a lot of things to be improved. But I don't think anybody was interested about those things. Those areas were totally neglected. That is the very reason was probably the men started deserting.
We were talking about your time in the army until you became Lieutenant General, the rank held by an army commander, in December 2005. Thereon, what was your decision-making power before 2005 and afterwards? How did, in your own voice and your experience, we'd like to hear how the transformation, how this shift took place in terms of ending terrorism and enabling a war victory for the country?
Yeah, before 2005, I was never in overall command of the army or something. I was in charge of certain areas, certain sections, like maybe the Jaffna commander or the general command in the troops in Trincomalee. I have been the Security Force Command in Vaunia, like that. So wherever I was in command, I had full control and I was doing my job and there were no failures. I ensured that there were no failures, operational failures. And I took care of men. Administration, I always ensured that I personally monitored and interfered and ensured that the men are looked after, the required facilities are kept in place at the correct time, at the correct place. All that was happening. But of course, when I took over as the commander, then I had a better, bigger responsibility to take care of 116,000 army I took over. Then when the war broke out, I started building the army. And finally, by the time I finished the war, the army strength had gone up to 200,000.
From?
116,000 to 200,000. So that's a fairly large army. But the budget-wise, the budgetary allocations, I was getting about 82 billion with the 116,000 army. Even with the 200,000 army, I was managing with the same amount, 82 billion. Of course, I had to get a lot of additional extra money to buy the weapons, arms and ammunition, because a lot of expenditure on the arms and ammunition. But most of them were taken on credit from China. Otherwise, I did not become a burden on the government, basically. I managed with the correct management and stop corruption and personal supervision, close monitoring, all that. I managed with the same amount of money, the allocation which was given to run the 116,000 army. So government did not have big issues. Of course, we are buying things on credit from China. They had to start paying back to China all for what all we had taken during the war. The payment started from 2012, and I think payments was completed by 2020. So at that time, there was no big burden on the government.
I'm sure there were a lot of diplomatic interventions in terms of securing these arms deals on credit, or not just from China, but from other countries also. So how did you manage this? Was this in consultation with the diplomatic corps represented in other countries, or was it their work?
The army was getting all our purchases we were doing from China, arms and ammunition. Mainly the Western countries, European countries, including USA, they were not giving us any, not ready to give us any offensive equipment and offensive weapons and things like that. Because they were not, on principle, they weren't supporting the war. They were against the army going to war. India, they supported us. We had the moral support from them, but because their own internal political issues, even they refused to give us any offensive weapons. So basically, we were getting everything from China. So in places like Russia, things are too expensive. We could not afford. Then there was only a certain period, a very short period, when, say, just prior to Olympics in China, they were not sending ships here, about 4 to 5 months. That time I spoke to the Pakistan Army commander personally. I knew him because I had visited Pakistan and come. Managed to get some ammunition and arms and equipment from Pakistan. That is the way we were doing it. So diplomatically, basically, most of the countries were against Sri Lanka going to war, basically.
You said you managed with the 82 billion budget
Yes.
Before 2005 and after as well. Does this mean you did not make a massive upgrade to the arms, or was there an upgrade made on credit?
As I said, same weapon systems. We were not going for more advanced weapon systems or anything. Same weapon systems, same type of ammunition. We couldn't afford many more advanced weapon systems and other things what was available in the world. So therefore, it was not a case of spending more on those things. But the cost of the ammunition was skyrocketing during these 2 years and 9 months. I don't know why it happened and how it happened. Now, for example, 130 millimeter artillery round, artillery ammunition. That round was you're buying for about $250 at the time we started the war, each. And mind you, we are buying shiploads of them. Expenditure very high. When you coming toward the end of the war, they were charging us about $650 per round. So, but of course, Army had nothing to do with those purchases and payments and other things. All that is done by the Secretary Defense and the Defense Ministry. I used to only give the list of the number of ammunition I require, the list. But then the dealing with the purchases and all that is done by the Secretary Defense. So I was not bothered about those things. That was not my problem. All that I wanted was to finish the war.
How did the decision to finish the war come about? And when did you decide that this was the strategy? How did you share it with the rest of your commanders? And let's talk about the political support you had.
That government which came into power, started in 2005 with Mahinda Rajapaksa becoming president. So in his manifesto, the election manifesto in 2005, he had very clearly said he does not believe in war for the North and East issue, the terrorism. Then he had said he had very clearly said he will personally meet Mr. Prabhakaran and have dialogue with him and bring a solution to this North and East conflict. That was his thinking. So when Mavillaru was closed, before that they attacked me, violating, there was ceasefire when I took over the army. From 2002 onwards it was going on. Because the terrorists were building up their the force, which was about 12,000 during 2002 when the ceasefire started. At the time we started the war, it had come up to about 35,000. And they had a lot of new weapon systems. They had almost all the weapons what we had. They had aircrafts, they had attack craft in the sea. So they had become a fairly capable offensive outfit by that time, during the ceasefire period.
Right.
So when I was attacked in 2006 April, also the politician didn't want to go to war. Although they violated the ceasefire, came and attacked me inside army headquarters. Still they didn't want to go to war. No, then the ceasefire continued.
Did you believe we had to go to war even at that time?
Yeah, I think in any other country, if the terrorists go to that extent during ceasefire, you will not have to talk about ceasefire after that, in any other country. So we were basically, politicians were scared to go to war. On one hand they were scared, on the other hand they had lost faith on the army, also on the military. Because there were so many occasions military went to war, but with a lot of reversals, they had to finally give up the war. In this country, basically, even famous generals like General Ranatunga, General Kobbeka, General Janaka Perra, all of them had said, they had publicly said, this solution cannot be settled with the war. They had said, you have to bring a political solution to this. So obviously the politician never believed that there will be a military solution to this under those circumstances. So when Mavillaru was closed, I was in hospital in Singapore that time after the suicide attack on me. 3 months in hospital, only 100 milliliters of water for a day for me. 3 months, no food, nothing, all with the tubes and other things. But when I heard that Mavillaru issue had taken place, I had doctors who had gone with me from here, from the army to a doctor. I told them to get the medicine and injections, everything, and said we'll go back. Because I had a huge wound here, it had healed halfway by that time. There was no cavity connecting the outer surface and the inner cavity, all that had got healed. So I said, let's go back. I came back. Secretary told me that there's an issue here, there's a problem here. He asked me, what can we do? Then I asked him what was the advice given by the acting army commander. There was acting army commander in my absence. He said the acting army commander said that we can't go to war because we don't have enough manpower. But we had 116,000 army, even at that time. I said, you give me about half an hour, I will talk to the people concerned in the east and various places. After half an hour, I phoned him up and said, I am going to go on offensive, I will capture this.
You phoned
Secretary Defense.
Secretary Defense.
Then they were very happy because there are a lot of pressure building up in the east from the civilians, politicians. They didn't know what to do because the military was refusing to go to war. I came back with the wound still, with the bandages and all that, plasters, everything. But after I told them, next day I went to Trincomalee, took a helicopter and went. And I found difficult even to get into helicopter. Because when I came from Singapore, I came to airport on a wheelchair. And when I came down at Bandaranaike International Airport, they had to almost carry me into the car. So I started eating some food and managed to get into the helicopter next day. And I started commanding the operation. For our luck, for me, they gave me a chance to continue from there onwards, expand from there, because Prabhakaran started attacking some of my camps also, south of Trincomalee. When we were thinking about Mavillaru, they started attacking my camps also. Then we captured Mavillaru. I immediately developed the operations towards Sampur and captured Sampur also. I knew that at some stage the politicians will want to stop the war. So therefore I started, when I was attacking Sampur, I started fighting with Wakare also. Likewise, I kept the army and the terrorists engaged in various places. Because as a continuation of the engagements, I knew that I was going to expand it. Then I expanded the whole operation until I cleared the whole of the east in 1 year. I continued from place to place. So it came to a stage where the politicians had no way of stopping us, because we had engaged the enemy in various places while still fighting in east. 2007 March, I sent a division to north also, north of Vavuniya.
Right.
So before I cleared east, I have already started a battle in the north. So likewise, I ensure that we don't give a respite so that the politicians can think of a break or a ceasefire, anything like that.
Why were you worried that the politicians might try to stop the war or halt the war? Was it because of the international pressure, or was it because you thought there was no determination from the political side? Because we understand you had the political will for the war.
No, I had to, basically I forced the political will onto them. When I said I am going on offensive at Mavillaru, even up to that time they had not taken decision to go on offensive. As I said, I told you, even when I was attacked, the army commander, they had no idea of going to war. They were, from 2002 onwards, there was ceasefire. LTT was building up, but people here in the south had a carnival time. Even in the army, majority of the generals did not like when I said I am going to war. Well, they all had got acclimatized with the ceasefire. They were not concerned about the fact that the LTT was building up, but they were all happy with the break they have got in the operational areas in the south, thinking the ceasefire will maintain peace forever. They were never concerned with the politicians, even majority of the military, never concerned about the potential scenarios what you are going to face in future, dangers to the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of the country.
How did you believe that you could end this war? We've obviously started the war with the belief that you will end it. Especially when your previous, you mentioned about the acting commander and other generals also who believed that you all didn't have sufficient manpower. How did you manage that fear among your fellow officials and soldiers?
What he said that we don't have enough manpower was unbelievable, because when the terrorists have about 35,000. Even at that time, the intelligence picture was wrong. They were saying about there are only 10,000 terrorists. Even with that, the wrong intelligence picture, still the army command, acting command was scared to go to war. When the intelligence people are saying only 10,000 terrorists are there. to my knowledge, as per my appreciations, I knew it is about 30 to 35,000. But when the intelligence picture of 10,000 terrorists, the army commander who had 116,000 army acting commander, he was scared to go to war. That was the psychology of the people.
I'm sure that psychology would have been shared among other soldiers who are in the battlefront, and because that comes down to them.
From time to time, military has had a lot of reversals. There was a stage when the terrorists started overrunning brigades, the divisions. Finally, they came and overran Elephant Pass, where there were 12,000 troops. Only with about 2,000 terrorists, they came and overran a place where there were 12,000 troops. So the morale was low. But with my experience, I also grew up with the war. For example, Prabhakaran took his first victim in Madagala, Doreappa, mayor of Jaffna. At that time, I was the officer in charge of that area. I was a lieutenant. We are in 2 pips here. But my job was to look after the beach to ensure that no smuggling takes place, not to do any land operation. So he fired his first shot in Madagala, in my area. And he fired his last shot also in my area when I was in charge of North and East, everything. So I grew up with the war. I took part in all offensive operations, every very dangerous operations which were conducted by the army, rescue operations, offensive operations. Time to time I have grown up with the war. I knew the shortcomings of the terrorists, I knew their tactics, I knew why the army failed, I knew the mistakes we made. Therefore I had confidence that we can defeat them if we do the right thing.
How did the army, together with other forces, build the morale of the soldiers, the officials? Because you said everyone got acclimatized to living a ceasefire and ensuring the peace in the country, while the terrorists disregarded an ongoing ceasefire. So how did that, I'm interested to know how that shift happened.
Basically, the junior officers and the men in the army, they worked with me in many places throughout. And they knew I had not failed in any of the places where I was in charge. So they had confidence on me. When they go for operation, they had confidence about me. I had a lot of successes, but I never had failures in the battlefield. So when I became the commander and when I started telling them what we must do, even before we started the Mavillaru, as I took over the army, started different training with my own experience, new concepts, new tactics I started introducing. So by doing all that, I was boosting up their morale little by little. I kept the army active. So when I came back from the hospital, when I started guiding them and directing them, because they had confidence on me, they were carrying out the instructions. I picked up people, the ground commanders and all that, whom I thought was capable of understanding my thinking, who could understand my instructions, who will do what I want them to do without grumbling. I picked up ground commanders and various people of that nature. And when I started doing that, identifying the correct people, putting them in the right place, that itself gave a lot of confidence to the army.
When you decided to go to war, was it your strategy to start small pockets of offensives across areas in the east and then venture into the north, or did you have a larger strategy in mind?
I had a large strategy. I knew that finally I have to finish it in the eastern coast, because I can't take it to the west coast, because then the LTT can always pull out, go through across the sea and vanish. Prabhakaran and all big fellows can run to India, even South India. So I knew finally I had to go aim at this area, the region Mulathu area. That was in my head. And also I introduced a lot of new concepts, new tactics to fight in very wide fronts, like a 15-kilometer front. Those things had not taken place in the army earlier, and in a number of fronts. So when I was doing all that, the LTT totally went out of balance. They didn't know how to cope up with the new fighting techniques of the army. And I knew that I had to first clear the east, ensure that we consolidate in the east, and ensure that the terrorists don't come back to east. Likewise, I started, my strategies all aimed at killing the terrorists, not to capture the ground. So the people thought the politicians are not happy at the beginning. They were questioning me in a number of occasions because they did not see the army moving forward fast.
People questioned you?
Because he was not trying to move the army fast. Capturing the ground was not my concept. As far as the terrorists are getting killed every day, I was happy because I knew I might sacrifice something. So we have to sacrifice a certain number of soldiers. But if more terrorists are getting killed, compared with the numbers we are losing, I knew one day we have to finish the 35,000 will wear off. So I knew that, and I knew that it was happening on the ground. When the army was not moving forward, not capturing ground, the politicians are getting a little nervous in many occasions.
So did you have pressure from the political side?
Yeah, they were asking me a number of occasions. Why that we are moving very slow, why can't we do it a little fast, and various questions. But I knew at some stage that things will catch up momentum and start moving fast.
What was the support you had from the three armed forces? Of course, you led the army, and we are talking about the Air Force, the Navy, the support that came from all sides to ensure the victory. And to add to that, the strategy in getting them together.
Basically, bulk of the LTT was deployed on the ground. They had the sea element, they had about 3 or 4 light aircrafts where they could come to Colombo and drop some bombs and go, improvised bombs, do very limited damage. But the bulk of they were, even LTT concentrated more on holding ground. That was that I was very lucky because Prabhakaran didn't want to vacate the ground. He wanted to sit and fight. So because the ground battle was the toughest and the worst battle, the burden came on the army basically. Now, for example, 2 years and 9 months, army had to fight every day and night, 24 hours we were fighting. No respite, no breaks. I didn't want to lose initiative. I didn't want to give them a respite. So finally I had lost 5,200 soldiers, paid supreme sacrifice, and about 3,000 became permanently disabled. So altogether 27,000 of my soldiers got injured in battle from the army. Comparatively, I know about 300 men died in the Navy. Out of that 300, also about 150 died at Digampatana when there was suicide attack, not in north and east. Air Force lost 8 soldiers for this whole period. When the LTT came and attacked Anuradhapura, and a couple of pilots, 2 pilots died. There was a helicopter crash. Altogether only 8 lost life in Air Force during this period. So you can see the burden was on us. But still, I got certain amount of support from Air Force in certain areas. We were trying to break into Kilnochi and go through those huge obstacles and the bunds and ditches and all that. Air Force was always ready to come and support me, and logistical support we got to a great extent from Air Force. Navy also was giving us the logistic support to Jaffna. And they were fighting their limited battles in their own classic role, like the Navy. If you say once in about 2 months, they will have a fight in the sea. Air Force, once in a way, they go and drop some bombs. Of course, in 2 to 3 hours, they are back again in Katunayaka. So that is the difference between the pressure on the services.
You were talking about the casualties of your soldiers as well as those who fought the war from the government, the Sri Lankan government side. If you talk about the civilian casualties, this is something after the war we saw the international community and we saw petitions made with the international community that some 40,000 civilians were killed in the offensives, and of course we did see individuals as Lord Naseby who were fighting saying no, this was not the case. But in your understanding, what really happened to the civilians there? In any war, there are casualties, but how ethical has the army been in understanding that security needs to be of utmost priority for the civilians while targeting terrorists who are at large among the civilians?
It was like this. What we had was a open offensive. It was a face-to-face confrontation with the terrorists. They were fighting also like conventional army, with artillery, with battle tanks, with the mortars, everything they were fighting with us. So normally the situation, this is not known to many people. Of course it is known to the Tamil people, but some people are exaggerating things and trying to throw mud at us. The general public, the Tamil public, they know the truth. Normally when the fighting starts, anyway, in those areas where we had our deployment, the LTT had their deployments, the front lines face to face, we were fighting through those lines. No civilians were present basically. In every place, the civilians were 5 kilometers, at least 5 kilometers away. Because the LTT never allowed the civilians to come and sit behind their trenches. When they are fighting, they don't allow the civilians to hang around in that area, so that all the intelligence, the information, everything will go out. And that will create problems to them. Especially when there was high intensity fighting taking place in the north, the civilians are always about 5 kilometers away. We had the UAVs, the type of fighting, the battlefield activities of the LTT wouldn't have allowed the civilians to hang around there, that close to them. And therefore, imagining a civilian getting killed at a rate due to the crossfire and area thing is totally misinterpretation of the whole thing. Then when it was going to last stages, say when we were, after we captured Kilnochi, we were moving towards east, trying to go towards Puthukudi and Mulathivu. Then the civilians started coming through, creeping through the LTT lines and entering our area. Altogether, there are about 50,000 civilians who had come like that, time to time in groups and various people. So whoever who came, we accepted them, we treated them, we gave them medical facilities, we ensured that they are safe in our areas. We put them into certain villages. Then finally, when they were getting close to Puthukudi Mulathivu area, when they were getting contracted, I had the task of getting the civilians out. It was a very difficult task. At the same time, I had to ensure that our firing does not cause the civilian casualties. So there were two occasions where after we captured Puthukudi, the civilians trapped in area between the lagoon and the coast. There were about 5 kilometer gap, the coastal belt. So they were trapped in that area, over 200,000 civilians.
Where they were held as a human shield.
Human shield. Then I had to, even when you were getting close to Puthukudi, you were controlling the firing. For example, 2008, I lost 2,000 men from my side. Because I was controlling the firing, not using heavy weapons, not using machine guns, only trying to rely on the personal weapon of the soldiers. 2009, for 4.5 months, I lost 2,000 soldiers. Because we were not using the maximum firepower. That is why same number what we used in 2008, I lost in 4.5 months in 2009. When they were trapped in that coastal belt, I had to take them out now. I knew there were about 250,000 civilians there. Then one day we attacked, went across the lagoon. We wanted to create a breach in the LTT defense. They had a bund around that area. We went across the lagoon. I put commandos and special forces because they are very capable people. Their firing is very accurate. So about 100 of commandos, 100 special forces across the lagoon, and we created a breach on the LTT defense at Pudumathalan. When we created the breach there, that day I lost SF Special Forces Major and lost about 40 soldiers, the way we had to conduct that operation. And when we breached the place, 135,000 civilians came across the lagoon immediately. Because when they were coming across the lagoon, the LTT was sending the suicide cadres to go through the civilians and export themselves to kill the civilians so that the civilians will run back. That is what the LTT was doing. Some of my soldiers also got killed. Because suicide cadres were coming with the civilians and exporting themselves. Some civilians died like that. Some or other we took 135,000 out on that day. That was 19th April 2009. Then again we had the foothold in Pudumatalam. Then we started rolling down southwards. Little by little, every day we were capturing about 500 meters. The battle was like a corporals and sergeants battle after that, April 19 to 19 May. Then finally, when they almost cornered into Mulatyu area, into area about 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, then again I knew there were still some civilians there. We had a breach again from the south. We sent troops from the south across the lagoon. That is the opening of the Nathikanda lagoon. We went across that and got a foothold. Then 85,000 civilians came. This would have been somewhere around 15th, no, not 15th, about 13th or 14th of May. When this 85,000 came, there were no civilians after that left behind. That it was only a case of terrorists holding onto that area, then the battle was very clear. So I gave you the example to show you that if 40,000 civilians dying is impossible.
Where did
if 40,000 civilians died there, somebody can go and start digging on those areas. Then every time you put use a memory or something, there should be a human skull or something. That is not practically correct.
But where did the white flag incident happen? You've made some controversial statements that even went to the international community.
I had to go to China somewhere around 11th or 12th May, because I had got about $200 million still left, which was to be used to buy some armored vehicles and some weapons from China. I had ordered them about 6 months prior to that. But to purchase the vehicles, I wanted to personally go and see them because they are very expensive vehicles. I can't waste so much of money buying some Mach somewhere or some vehicles which are not durable and not good for the job or something like that. So I had planned a visit 6 months before, but due to operational requirements, I was postponing the visit. Then about 3 weeks before, say by end of end of April, they told me that unless I come and visit and give me the final order, place the final order, take a decision, they will have to sell this vehicle to some other country, they said. So therefore, I could not postpone it anymore. I would have been happy to postpone it 1 more month because I knew the war was going to be over very soon. So I had planned to go to China. I left somewhere around 12th, I think. I took my operational staff, I took my maps, I took my telephone communication equipment, everything, to be in touch with the people in the field. The same way I was commanding from Army headquarters, I was commanding from China. Talking to Shavindra twice daily, talking to Jagat Jayasuriya, Jagat Alvis twice daily, Kamal Gunaratnam. So I was controlling the war still. So when I was there, later on I heard, in fact after the war was over, somewhere around 16th, I think, I came back 17th night from China, 9 o'clock night. The final battle started 2:30, 17th night. It went on till about 11 o'clock on the 19th, final battle. But I was here by that time. 9 o'clock night, 17th, I was here. After the war was over, I heard, I came from here and there have been discussions with some diplomatic circles, some people, ICRC. I heard that Basil Rajapaksa was talking to them, conversations about terrorists trying to surrender to a third party or something like that. Come out with the white flags and various things and surrender to third party, all that. But all these things I heard only after everything was over. During that time, they never told me when I was communicating with them. But none of them told me that there are discussions.
Them referring to?
No, the people who were talking to diplomatic circle.
Okay.
Nobody contacted me, not even Secretary and said that there are discussions going on like this. So the battle was continuing and the operations are going on as far as I was concerned. Later on I heard that there have been discussions like this. And after the war was over, one day some journalists, I can't remember, there's so many journalists talking to us at that time, even the correspondents and a lot of people. Some people asked me one day whether there have been this case where people wanted to surrender with white flags, and some people said no and various things. I didn't know the details anyway. 2 journalists had asked me. So during the election campaign, she asked me about this, the same way you asking me now. Then I only answer I gave her was, I said previously also 2 journalists asked me about this. That is all I said. I said I don't have any details about the discussions. But next day she went and wrote in headlines in the paper, he said, the former army commander confirmed there have been the discussions about surrendering and various the long story. So these people capitalized on that and they were trying to charge me and put me in the jail, saying that I have pointed the finger at the government or something like that, or I was trying to let the side down by blaming the military about shooting the people who were carrying white flags, and huge story was created by them. But I only knew and I only spoke what I spoke to you now, because that is all I knew.
Talking about accountability and and the victims of the war, especially of the northeast communities of Sri Lanka. I think the international community, we've seen how resolutions have been passed at the UNHRC as well. What is your opinion in this regard, and how far are we in terms of ensuring that the victims, their answers, especially of the missing persons, should be, that these families are given the answers and accountability provided before them?
About the missing people, now the LTT ethos that did not permit the relatives to come and take the dead bodies of their kids and kins. When if they are dead, LTT 35,000 was eliminated, except 12,000 we took into custody at the end of the war. 12,000 surrendered. 23,000 LTT was killed. That is confirmed. We were maintaining a record day to day, the numbers dying. So these people who died, LTT will never contact their relations and say that you so and so had died and that we are sending the dead body to you and all. That will never take place in that manner. They are burying them, or I don't think they were cremating them. They are burying them somewhere. And that's all. In fact, if you can ask Roshan Gunathilaka, at one stage when we were around Pudukudiripu, the UAV was monitoring a burial ground in Pudumatalan area, the LTT burial ground. They were bringing the dead bodies covered with the LTT flag, the same way we are giving the funeral, the right to our soldiers. They were doing it. They bring and covered with the LTT flag and bury them in order, in a formation. About 900 of them were being buried there. So Roshan Gunathilaka was watching it and his people were counting how many are being buried here. Likewise. So the parents, most probably they may have known that their children were with the LTT, but once they are dead, LTT will never tell them that your son is dead or something like that.
But Sri Lanka is held accountable for the victims, the missing, the dead. How do you think you engage with them?
If somebody goes to war as a terrorist and if he dies, nowhere in the world that the government will try to give compensation for a terrorist who came and fought against their legitimate military. It has never taken place anywhere in the world. Why should you go and basically, you are a terrorist. The fact that you have taken a weapon into hand was an illegal thing. Then you get killed. Then your own supporters bury you. Then are we supposed to go and dig and unearth and do all that and pay the compensation for a person like that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any logic behind that.
There are also questions about young people who went missing, also about youth, civilians who went missing. So is there any truth to this? And how far do you think Sri Lanka should go in terms of healing the wounds of those who have questions unanswered?
I like this. I don't think there is a way of giving compensation for terrorists. Basically, if a man becomes a terrorist, you attack the legitimate forces, you get killed, then what will happen in any country? There will be legal action against you, and your own property even can be confiscated as per the law, the existing laws. So I don't think you can go around giving compensation for the dead terrorists. But if there are cases, innocent people, somewhere somebody has got killed, then government has to take care of them. There is no argument about it. But if because your son went to war, joined the terrorist outfit, died there, even if parents come and say, my child is missing, government has to give me the compensation, then that is a question. When we know very well about 60,000 terrorists have died all the way from the very inception, according to their records. So how do we know who is the 60,000 and who are the innocent people who died?
Some 50 of your officers then during the war, including you mentioned General Shavendra, who became an army commander and now chief of staff, are banned from the US and have various sanctions. So wartime commander, you're sitting here, I'd like to know how you deal or whether you intend to work with the international community in maybe working out something for your officers, or whether there is room to create that environment for them.
The first person whose entry was banned was me, by USA. I had a green card. They did not even renew that. They don't tell me that it has been banned or rejected. They say it is pending. But they don't give me any new visas to enter USA from the time I left the army. Not yesterday or day before yesterday. Even when I was minister, my name was put down for the team to go to UN as a minister, to go with president, till they turned down my entry. Even when I was a minister, to go in the UN team. Then I was trying to apply for a visa to United Kingdom as the wildlife minister. There was a conference. I was trying to go for that. They said, please don't apply. They don't say that there's a ban on me, but they don't accept me entering their countries. So the problem, it applies to me also equally. So it is the same manner to Shavendra, so many others, about 50 odd senior officers I think altogether. All the problems started because there have been one or two instances. There were complaints. I will avoid mentioning names here. I myself wanted to take action before I retired. But all that were blocked by various people.
Various people in the army or political side?
Yeah, because when they removed me, automatically they got blocked. Some of the people at whom I was pointing the finger were given promotions also after that.
So do you think action should be taken now in order to bring a closure to...
If there have been any incident, not many incidents killing 40,000 civilians and all that, but there have been one or two incidents definitely. Like in the past, when the military, anybody who has committed any offense, the military has taken action. We don't try to hush them up. We don't try to cover it up. Like Manamperi case, Ambilipitia, the officers are sent to even given death sentence. Some were given 10 years, 15 years jail sentence. The army must never try to do it. You can't say that somebody will try to say that I have let the side down if I punish one of the fellows who had committed some offense. No, that is my job. I will try to do it. But those who were in authority at that time, they covered them up, blocked them. That is why all the people are pointing the finger at the whole army, the government and the country as a whole. Because we have not taken action against the one or two odd people who committed offenses. That is the problem. So those who are responsible for this is the government at that time who failed to take action when the action had to be taken.
I wish I could speak to you longer, but this is all the time we have on the show. We wish we could have an in-depth discussion. Thank you very much for your time here with us, Field Marshal, as we celebrate National War Heroes commemoration, and at the same time talking about and revisiting the time of the war and the victims of war.
Before I finish, I want to pay my gratitude to all those who sacrificed their lives, all those who are rendered disabled, and to their next of kin and their loved ones for the contributions, the sacrifices they have made for this country to remain intact as in one piece, for the safeguard territorial integrity and the sovereignty of this country. And they have prepared the way, paved the way for the people today to live peacefully in this country. So we are grateful, we are indebted to them. That I want to remind to all the people in this country.
We are indeed indebted and grateful for the efforts of the war heroes, eliminating terrorism, a separatist outfit, and ending a 3-decade war here in Sri Lanka. We had with us Sri Lanka's 18th commander of the Sri Lanka Army, the wartime commander of Sri Lanka Army, who was later elevated to the position of Field Marshal here in Sri Lanka, Sarath Fonseka. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again next week at the same time at HydePark with yet another discussion. Good night.